Story time about how my best friend was stealing from me. A little background information. I was 17 or 18 whenever this all happened, and I was a senior in high school. Now, my family and I had just moved to a new state, and that is where I met my best friend, who we are going to call Grace. Now, Grace and I clicked instantly, but anytime that we would hang out, she would always want to come to my house and never wanted to go to hers. Her excuse was that she had a lot of siblings and our house was super small, there was nothing to do, you know, which I didn't really care. I had no problem with this at all, until some weird shit started happening in my house. And when I say weird shit, I mean that stuff in my house literally started disappearing. Now, at first, I wasn't that suspicious because it was just my clothes. And y'all know how things get lost in the laundry sometimes. But then it started to become stuff like my shoes and purses. So, you know, I go and I ask my mom if she's seen any of my clothes or shoes or purses. And she goes and looks through her things to see if anything might be mixed in, but while she's doing that, she's realizing that some of her shit is missing too. So at first we're thinking that it's the cleaning lady, which I feel super bad about, but you know, before we blame anybody else that, you know, we love and trust and we think would never steal from us, we would think that it would be more logical for somebody who doesn't really know us to steal from us. So we confront her and she denies everything, but just to be sure, we did something to test her and she did not steal our shit. But after this, we're getting a little bit worried that other stuff in the house might be missing, so we go and look and our jewelry is missing as well. So now we only had 2 suspects. First we had my cousin because she would stay over sometimes, and then we had Grace, which I thought was very unlikely because she was always with me. But nonetheless, I started to be more cautious around her. I would try to be more aware of where and what she was doing while she was in my house. And for a few days, nothing happened. So obviously, after a few times of her coming over, I was 99.9% sure that she wasn't stealing from us. But then, of course, the one night, she must have not realized that I was still awake because she got up to, I'm assuming, go to the bathroom. So I keep pretending to be asleep. And when she walked out of my room, I saw her walk towards the living room. And I decided not to go out there. Instead, I was going to wait until she came back with shit because that would be super awkward if I just went out there and she really could have just been getting some water or something. Well, what do you know? She comes back with some of our shit and she stuffs it in her book bag. So I decide not to confront her. I actually wait till the next day to just tell my mom about it. And that's when she told me that I just wasn't allowed to speak to Grace again or see her. But I wanted my shit back, so I go to her house to surprise her. Her sister ends up answering the door and she lets me in. So, you know, she brings me into the living room and I'm sitting on the couch, and whenever Grace comes into the living room, you all should have saw her. It looked like she's seen a fucking ghost. And then she goes, "Why are you here?" Like, girl, you're not even gonna pretend to be happy to see me after you just stole all my shit? After you just robbed me? How rude of you. No, but I actually told her that I was there to finish a project with her, so she was like, okay, we can do it in the living room. And then I tell her that I need to go to the bathroom, and I go back. I find her room. As soon as I walk in, I see my shit. So I pull my phone out and I record everything. And she walks in her room. I don't even care. I'm literally still recording everything. Like, she's crying and saying, "Oh my goodness, like, you know, my mom made me steal this stuff because we're low-key down bad right now and we need money, da-da-da-da-da, and she knew y'all were rich." Like, babe, do me a favor. Save the sob story for someone who cares. And okay, just for shits and giggles, let's say that you are struggling. If you're struggling that bad, you would have been sold my shit because why is everything still in your room? So, you know, I threatened to call the cops on her unless she gives all my shit back, and she didn't want that, so obviously she gave it all back. Well, I did find out a few days later that she was, in fact, trying to sell my stuff, but I don't care. You should have just came to me instead of fucking somebody over who actually cared about you.
Here are just some of the worst times that men have hit on me. Worst moments, like, what are you doing, bro? Out of all the times in the world you want to hit on me, you chose now. A couple years ago, my cousin died. Oh, no, when, like, someone dies, everyone's posting on Facebook about it, like, posting on their wall kind of thing. Maybe that's just, like, a me thing, but, like, the dead person, they're, like, commenting on their Facebook wall, which also, like, doesn't make sense. Like, they're not gonna see it. But they're, like, commenting, like, "Miss you," and you're just like, oh my god, I didn't even know that this person was, like, friends with all of these people. So that's how it was with my cousin. I was like, oh, I didn't even know he was friends with half these people that I also know. A couple weeks go by and I'm in a fragile state, to say the least. This man swipes up on my Snapchat story and I'm like, wait a fucking minute. I saw this man on my dead cousin's Facebook page being like, miss you, bro, kind of thing. So I was like, I wonder what the correlation between them is. I'm dealing with death. I am a frazzled bitch. Obviously, as one is, I'm just like, whatever. Like, whatever comes to my mind, like, I'm gonna say that. Especially regarding the person who passed. So, this man swipes up on my Snapchat stories, like, giving me hard eyes and stuff. And I'm like, hey, like, how did you know my cousin kind of thing? Because I'm like, well, how did you know him? Like, you know, like, I just need to know. He's like, oh, like, knew him from junior high kind of thing. Like, that's how I knew him. Okay, that's, like, literally all I wanted to know. Like, I don't need to keep having a conversation with this man. Okay, cool. This man responds with, like, yeah, like, I could pick you up sometime and we could talk about him. I said, I don't know this man. Like, I do not know this fucker whatsoever. And why would I want to, like, go in a car with a random man and talk about my dead cousin? Like, I didn't even see his ass at the funeral. Like, and, like, of all the years my cousin was alive, this man was never at the house. Like, this man who's like, we could talk about your dead cousin. The man was, like, never at my cousin's house kind of thing. So I'm like, what the fuck? Like, there's no fucking way. This conversation went from hard eyes to, like, let me pick you up and let's chit chat about, like, your dead cousin. I was like, absolutely fucking not. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, I low-key thought about it. I was that lonely and sad during that point in my life, and I just felt so fucking alone. I was like, you know, I might just do it. And Sissy was like, don't do that. Don't ever do that. But men love a grieving bitch. Like, that is something I've noticed, is that, like, men love a bitch who's grieving. But let's just talk about that. Fuck, like, the weird times of them, like, hitting on me. Men love a grieving bitch. I had a really good friend pass away. So 2 of the hardest days of the year are her birthday and the day she passed. And so, like, obviously, like, I'll post a little something on Instagram. Talk about the amount of swipe ups I'll get on that kind of story from men, like, kind of thing. And I'm just, I don't know why it just, like, creeps me out a little. It's just reminded me of the story when I asked my dead friend, I was like, girl, can you just send me a good man? Cause I talked to her, I'll be like, bitch, like, send me a good fucking man, like, one that you would approve of kind of thing. Like, I'm tired of these bum ass hoes. Send me a good one. 3 days later, a man pops into my life and I'm like, bitch, I know you heard me. Like, I know you heard me. The man this bitch sent me was a fucking joke. The worst man I've ever met in my entire life. I said, you got me so fucked up. I remember when things ended, I was sitting there with Sissy, like, I asked her for a good man and she's like, well, you know her taste in men was horrible. So, like, what did you expect? Literally was like, bitch, you're so fucked up for that. Like, you're so fucked up for that. And I know you're in heaven laughing about it. Like, I know you're giggling about it. I know you think it's funny. I mean, it was a little bit funny. That is the last time I'll ever ask her to interfere with my dating life. Like, she's clearly not Cupid. Oh my God. That is just the story time of how, I guess, all the dead people in my life just really like to fuck with my dating life. You know, like, they just have their little moments in my dating life. I love you forever, but, like, let's chill with my dating life.
I don't know how to tell my dad that my stepmom hates me. This is a juicy one. Stick with me, y'all. I really don't know what to do about my situation and I don't have anyone close to give me advice, so I thought here I can maybe get some advice. I have an amazing dad who raised me since my mom passed away when I was 5 years old. He is my friend, my supporter, and someone who I want to be like when I grow up. When my dad first introduced my stepmom to me, I was 10 years old and she was very nice to me and he looked so happy that we met and hoped we could get along. They got married when I was 13 and I was so happy that my dad and I had a new member in our family. I thought me and SM were getting along until I think a few months after their honeymoon she told me one morning that we just need to pretend to like each around my dad, but when he is not here that I shouldn't bother her. Honestly, this shattered me, but I agreed cause I didn't know what else to do. After that day, whenever it was just me and SM, she would say things to get to me and I would just not say anything. I'm introverted and don't like confrontation, so I just took it and thought over time she would get over it, but it got worse. She would talk about my height and weight and say I was a funny looking version of my dad. I hoped my dad would notice, but he didn't. He actually thinks me and SM are so close and she understands me. He looks so happy with her that maybe it's worth not saying anything and giving it time. This year my SM has started picking on me around my dad and he has either joined in or ignored it. I have voiced that what she says makes me uncomfortable and hurts, but my dad says she is teasing and doesn't mean it to hurt me. Well, right now I'm at my ends and I'm scared, I'm angry, frustrated at my SM and my dad. Dad was away for work and it was just me and SM at home. She had a party at home with a couple of her friends. I helped set the house up and cook dinner cause Dad asked me to help out, which was fine. After they ate and just hung out, they were hanging out on the porch when I heard SM and her friends talking very loudly outside my window while I was in my room. SM friends talked about how lucky SM was to have a nice husband and a house. When they mentioned how nice it was that I cooked for them, SM told them that I was annoying and weird and she hated me and living with me and couldn't wait till I was 18 to kick me out. I was shocked that she hated me that much, but I didn't know why. TBH, I thought we were tolerating each other, but to hate me I must have done something, but I can't think of what I did. I've been kinda down since that day, which was 2 weeks ago, and I thought I was past the initial feelings, but at rugby training today I bursted into tears and my coach sent me home, so I drove to a beach and cried. I was feel so much I honestly can't describe my emotions. I eventually fell asleep in my car. Now I'm here hoping I can get advice on how to talk to my dad about it, cause I'm scared about how he will react. I don't want my dad to be sad cause he does so much for me, but I'm not strong like him. I'm really struggling. My question is, how can I approach this conversation with my dad about my SM hating me? Or should I tell him it all? I think my sicko neighbor might be stalking me. I'm so scared that my husband will get crazy mad over it. I, 24, live in a pretty close-knit neighborhood. I'm a stay-at-home mom to a toddler girl and a boy who's in first grade. My husband, 32, works away from home and he's gone most of the day, sometimes overnight. I've begun noticing that the neighbor who lives on our left, who is 28, is around a lot more. I know he works from home. But I feel like I see him whenever I'm outside with my kids. When I go to the grocery store I notice him leaving as well, and then he pulls back in at the same time as me. Whenever I come back from picking my son up from school he's outside. I have a Ring doorbell and have noticed when I go right from the school to my house, till the 20 minutes, he's only out for 20 minutes, he'll go right in after I go in. But if I go somewhere else, or take longer, he'll be out there until I come home, and then he'll go back in. I feel kind of freaked out. I have always had fine interactions with him, he always waves and everything. He works as a programmer from home and he's never done anything bad. It's just how often I see him. I don't want to mention anything to my husband because he has a pretty short fuse and I'm scared he'll flip out and go and confront him or think I'm having an affair, something crazy like that. Am I just being paranoid or does this seem like something I should mention? I was concerned that my neighbor was stalking me. I was debating whether or not to tell my husband for fear of him overreacting. I decided to tell my husband about it. I just said, hey, have you noticed Trevor outside a lot? And he said no and asked me why, and I said, oh, no reason, I've just noticed him outside whenever I'm out there. And I wish I hadn't said anything. My husband immediately was like, what do you mean noticing him? Why are you noticing him? And I tried to drop it but he kept pushing. So I eventually just told him basically what I wrote in my post and he exploded. And immediately went next door even though I begged him not to. And he went to our neighbor's door and started pounding on it. And yelling. Our neighbor came to the door and knew my husband was looking for a fight because he was immediately like, you need to leave now. Obviously my husband didn't leave and it began a pretty serious verbal altercation, and eventually physical. The police came and broke it up, telling my husband to go back home and stay away from the neighbor. As you can imagine the entire thing was horrible. All of the neighbors were outside. We live in a pretty affluent, quiet neighborhood so the police don't usually get called. When we got back into the house my husband began yelling at me. He asked me if I was sleeping with the neighbor, why I had been asking about him, why the neighbor got so defensive, etc. He was so angry I didn't recognize him. He began hitting the walls and throwing things. When I tried to reason with him and tell him the situation he began to get physical with me as well. After a while I was able to call the police. They arrested him and I had to stay at the hospital for a bit. Right now my kids and I have an order of protection against my husband. I have not seen or talked to him since this happened. After I came home I went over to my neighbor's house to apologize for what happened. He told me that he had known my husband was abusive, and he could hear him yelling at me and the kids. He said that the reason he was often outside when the kids and I were is because he said he felt unsure about if he was abusive or not and wasn't sure if he should say something. He said that he used the times to say hi to us to see if there were any bruises or signs of physical injury, and to see if the kids seemed alright. I don't want to reconcile with my husband. My oldest son, 6, keeps asking me why his father used his hands instead of his words. My 2-year-old keeps playing with her dolls and saying, Daddy, don't hit. Don't hit. It makes me want to cry. They're seeing therapists to help process all of this. My girlfriend's dad is abusive towards me and my girlfriend defends him constantly. My girlfriend and I have been dating for over a year and I've met her parents a few times, and each time her dad has made a strong point to criticize me heavily. According to him, he's not sure if I'm manly enough for his daughter because I paint my nails. Thankfully, they live 4 hours away from us, so we do not go over often. This year was going to be the first holiday that I spent with her family. We drove down Thanksgiving morning and we're going to spend the night there, then a few days at a resort. For context on my girlfriend's parents, they are blue collar and church going, while I teach high school math. A bit of a cultural difference. My girlfriend made me promise not to get into a discussion with her dad on politics or religion. I was fine with that, I'm not going to change his mind. As I've stated before, her dad never hid the fact that he didn't respect me. Well, this time when I arrived, the whole time that I was there, on top of talking about the fact I paint my nails, which is such an outdated view, he kept making comments about teachers indoctrinating students, Common Core, and other nonsense. This was no reason for me to get in a fight though, I'm sure that's what he wanted by doing this. The whole time he did this, I mostly ignored him, but he never let up, he was a total buttface. Everyone was uncomfortable. My girlfriend and her mom tried to change the subject but they never stood up to him when he called me out or even called me a girly wimp. When he commented about the LGBTQ, I was done with his crap and told my girlfriend, in front of her dad, that either she could say something or I would be more than happy to. She begged me not to make a scene. Her dad was telling me to go ahead and try to make a scene. But considering my girlfriend was begging me not to, I didn't. I went upstairs, packed up, thanked everyone and left. As I was leaving I heard her dad say that I'm acting like a woman by feeling so emotional that I'm walking out. I didn't respond. I went on to the resort and enjoyed my weekend alone. My girlfriend has been trying to apologize, but when I asked what she said to her dad when I left, she told me she still never confronted him. On top of that, he continued to insult me after I left. Her only solution seems to hope that he'll eventually lighten up.